We are just so excited to have Kyle here. I just want to read a little bit about his bio. At St. Joe's, Kyle was a BI and econ double major with a minor in finance. He graduated from the honors program and completed a departmental honors thesis. He also uses the skills learned from his BI and quantitative econ classes to map how data flows throughout SJU and create multiple predictive student retention models. When Kyle graduated, he was also awarded the Economics Award, DSS BI Award, and the University Student Senate Award for scholarship. Beyond academics, Kyle was a 4-year starter for St. Joe's tennis team, an orientation leader, a Hawk host, and a member of Delta Sigma Pi. And after college, Kyle joined PwC for a 2-year stint working in analytics, consulting, and internal innovation, developing a new team to automate repeatable processes. He left PwC to join Venture for America, and through the VFA fellowship program, he now works at a marketing technology company called Jornaya, where Kyle is the manager of analytics. As a manager of analytics, Kyle designs analytics products for the data we sell or they sell as a company. So Kyle has done so much, and we're just so grateful to be able to hear from him. Now I understand y'all not here to keep hearing me talk. So Kyle, let's get to you. All right. So thank you for being here. And to start, I just wanted to know if you could describe within your current role just the core responsibilities and what a typical day or week looks like for you.
Sure. And first, before I start on that question, I see a few names and of people I know on here, and Dr. Mendoza, always great to be zoomed into one of your classes. But for my current role as it is today, so as Javier said, I'm the manager of analytics at a marketing technology company called Jornaya. And basically to best explain what Jornaya does in one sentence, is Jornaya provides data to big brands about whether or not they can legally reach out to leads and how to optimize the people who they market to, right? So whether or not they're actually in market for the products and services that they're selling. And typically we play in industries like banking, insurance, higher education, as well as automotive. So major life purchases is how you would kind of umbrella all of those industries. And so where I fit into that picture as the manager of analytics is, so we collect a whole bunch of data within these industries. And I, as a manager of analytics, my job is to essentially take this big data. And so we witness about billions of web transactions, per year. So it's truly hundreds of billions in reality. So it's truly working with big data, which you hopefully and might have heard about in your BI classes, and transforming that data into actionable insights and into standardized products where, if a client buys a certain data set from us, then we can provide them visual analytics that helps them understand their data a bit better and make decisions based off of the data they're purchasing from us. And so with a typical day and week, a lot of my work is focused on building those analytics products. And right now, I'm in a role where I'm trying to transition us from doing less customized analysis, so less analysis that's specific to one individual client, and focused on more building out more scalable visual analytics products. And so building out analyses and reporting that we can distribute as standardized products to all of our clients and provide greater value across our business, as opposed to doing analyses for one specific client.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for sharing that. One thing I forgot to mention If anybody has questions, feel free to just throw those in the chat. We will do a quick Q&A at the end. So feel free to throw any questions in the chat. Kyle, as you were talking, I was reminded of kind of this general thing I like to bring up to students, like this question of what do you go to bed dreaming about, right? Talking about things that you're passionate about, things you want to do. So I'm wondering for you, when did you know that this was a career path that you wanted to pursue, and what led to that decision for you?
Yeah, so I really first got intrigued in business intelligence and data in general, really when I took my first analytics course at St. Joe's, which I believe it was business statistics with Dr. Miori. And so, her and I just clicked and had conversations, beyond just the academic setting about everything that was going on in the analytics industry. And me, I've always been interested in understanding how people make decisions. And so that's why I came in as an econ major, because I wanted to look at that at a macro scale. And when I was in that class, I was like, oh, wow, this really, helps, like, using data to answer those questions. It can be a really powerful tool in understanding decision making. And then I took that class and then was instantly intrigued in the major, ended up switching my major, and then taking further classes with Dr. Miori and Dr. Mendoza, among others, just further solidified that decision. And also, while recognizing that the external environment, when you go out looking for jobs and looking to start a career, that the ability to analyze data and the ability to recognize, kind of put together like what's going on with the business and what's going on with the data, and using that to explain it, is an extremely valuable skill set, and is something that a lot of companies are really looking for. So
Yeah, that's a great answer. And another thing that comes to mind is you mentioned it was a class for you that sparked that interest. I'm wondering, what do you say to the people who are still kind of not sure? Like, what are the other ways you think people can realize, oh, maybe this is for me?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, ultimately it may not be for you too, while recognizing that reality, just continuing to invest time into the coursework. And then really for me, just developing relationships with the professors in the department really helped me kind of realize the potential and the exciting things that comes with that major. And so that was the biggest factor for me, where, Dr. Mendoza, Dr. Miori, they always had open door policies, and I, took advantage of that, and would have conversations with them, about the coursework, and, taking the coursework beyond the classroom too. And for me, probably my most significant academic experience in college was actually my senior year. You mentioned it earlier in my introduction, but doing my departmental honors thesis, where I interviewed over 30 staff at St. Joe's, mapped out how data flowed throughout the institution, identifying different silos of data. Dr. Mendoza, if you haven't talked about silos yet, I remember that term specifically from your class. But silos of data in the institution, and looking at specifically how student information existed within St. Joe's, and anonymizing that student information and using that to build predictive models about whether or not a student was able to more likely to graduate or not graduate. And so just that example right there, right, was really even though it was a rudimentary model, wasn't by any means what I would call like a finished product. By the end of my project, it was just such a cool experience to dive in and use data to understand decision making a little bit better, and using statistics to figure out what are the impactful characteristics of students that make them more or less likely to graduate.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I wanted to ask was, what is the typical career path for an entry-level associate within your organization or field in general?
Yeah, so Jornaya specifically, when I joined, it's been a little bit of a whirlwind. So I joined it through the Venture for America fellowship, which for those of you that may not be familiar, it's essentially a fellowship for recent college graduates who are interested in entrepreneurship and joining impactful startups in cities that aren't traditionally considered startup markets. So places like, Philly is one of the cities, Detroit, Cleveland, Birmingham, Miami, et cetera. And so when I joined VFA through the fellowship network, I found Jornaya as a startup. And so I joined as like at a entry level job as a product success data analyst. And one thing I found constant throughout my career is change. And within 3 months of being at the company, a couple people left, and I had a skill set where like I know how to work Tableau, and the people who previously knew how to work our Tableau and our business intelligence system left. And so 3 months into the job, I found myself in charge of an entire business system just by need. And so, just through through that adversity, and one thing I've always felt like in my career, whenever adversity has presented itself, there's always opportunity within that adversity. And so, if a person leaves or a project goes awry, it prevents an opportunity, for myself or whoever's in the position to act upon it, to really kind of, take it by the horns and, really run with it. And you have an opportunity to prove yourself. And so I found that in PwC when I was in my entry level position there, and then here where I was presented with an adverse situation and then dove in and then was able to figure it out. And then because of my work there, was able to be promoted to manager this summer. And so I generally find that you always have adversity within your career, and it's good to kind of keep the perspective to recognize the opportunity within that.
Yeah. And I don't know if y'all caught that, but I love that phrase, that adversity oftentimes comes with opportunity. And I'm wondering if you could just speak a little more about that, because I'm sure a lot of us could make an argument that some of the biggest adversity we face has come in the form of a pandemic, right? So for our students, with that kind of adversity, what opportunities how do you think that statement applies to our students today, specifically in the context of the world we've been living in over the last few years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess, one of the things I've kind of seen from my vantage point is specifically for analytics students, it's really created a lot of opportunity because, and just, within the tech industry in general, because everything has moved to this virtual world. There's more, decision making done remotely. And there's a really higher demand for, transitioning to this digital environment, which involves data-driven decision making, right? And so bringing an analytics skill set to the table, I think is now more valued than ever before. And certainly, you know, it's been an incredibly challenging almost 2 years now of adjusting to this new reality and working through adverse circumstances. But I think the desire to move digitally is one of those things that's here to stay, and that as an analytics student is a trend that's not going to change, that you can, you know, really place yourself in a good position to take advantage of.
Yeah, that's great insight. Thank you for that. Moving on, I wanted to know, what do you enjoy the most about your profession? And what is something that you wish you could change?
Yeah, there's never, I really love how, you know, with analytics, there's no shortage of problems to solve. Right, which is both a good and a bad thing, because it's one of those career paths that I've found that is always intellectually challenging, and always challenging me to grow in different ways too, and not just from a technical perspective, right? But also from, you know, a leadership and communication perspective, right? Or how can I, if you're presented with all these different problems, how can I organize a team around these problems and properly prioritize those problems in order to get done, right? And how can I communicate to folks who maybe aren't as technical or in the analytics sphere, you know, what problem are we trying to solve, and how are we solving it, and why are we solving it, right? And so there's a host of, you know, that's one of the things I enjoy the most, is just how multifaceted, how analytics is really one of those unique professions where you touch all elements of the business. Where I think that's something companies are, and my company included, is trying to figure out, where does analytics fit? Because analytics spans everything, right? You can have analytics for market-facing teams, you can have analytics for engineering teams. It's one of those professions where, you know, it applies everywhere. And so because of that, it makes it, you know, excellent for growth opportunities, and excellent, you know, to explore different aspects of a business. And I think also with that prevents its challenges too, right? Where like one of the things is, a lot of times organizations don't necessarily know how to handle analytics, right? Where you can kind of get things thrown over the fence to you, and like, you know, have work expected to be done. And, you know, the situation I find myself in is I'm trying to minimize the amount of custom work that we're doing, right? And so I think some of the challenging elements of analytics is for organizations, even now, you know, still figuring out how to optimally use professionals within their organization. Which again, through adversity comes opportunity, right? So you're able to trial and error and kind of figure that out, which is what I'm trying to do right now. That's another opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of just to piggyback off of that question, I'm wondering, what has surprised you the most about your career, that maybe coming in you weren't, you know, aware of, but now that you're in it, you're like, oh wow, yeah, this is a little surprising.
Yeah. So for me, I started at PwC, right? And I know Mari, she just joined PwC, so I have to give a shout out to her there. Congrats, Mari. But for me, I what surprised me most about this profession is just how entrepreneurial it is, right? Which is, you know, why I joined. It kind of helped me realize that, you know, I really love kind of the entrepreneurial path, startup path, and, you know, with analytics being so widely applicable, right? You're constantly having to work through ambiguity and complexity with maybe not the full amount of information that you would like. And you kind of just have to pick a path, move forward. And then if you're wrong, you're wrong. And I've been wrong so many times over my short career. But it's, the ability to recognize when you're wrong and, know what the data is telling you, know what the results are telling you, and then being able to pivot to the next thing. And so, it's very, very, I'll say my career has been, and honestly, doing a departmental honors thesis, I think was one of the best things I could have done for my career, because the work you do, it's very different in the fact that you're not assigned stuff typically. Oftentimes you just have to figure it out, right? And you have to figure out what the problem is, right? And then you have to figure out a solution, right? So there's a lot of ambiguity as opposed to, completing an assignment.
Yeah. And I hear you talking about this, knowing when you're wrong, right? That reminds me how so many of us are crippled by this fear of failure, right? And I'm wondering for you, what does that look like for you in your sphere, and how do you get past that?
So I came out of school definitely with that fear. And I remember my very first project at PwC. I had an awesome manager. His name was Lorenz, and I remember I messed something up in the project I was doing, and I remember like talking with Lorenz, trying to like justify it or like do like a scramble to like kind of like cover my tracks basically. And he just said to me, he's like, "It's okay if you screwed up." Like I was like, "Oh, really?" It just like kind of like shattered this like previous notion I had that like once you come out to be a professional, like you have like you have to be on it, right? Because now I'm getting paid for the work as opposed to paying an institution to do the work, and that's not true, right? It's way and in fact, like with the company I'm in, I would say, admitting your mistakes is like very valued, right? And just learning from them. You need to have having that mentality of admitting mistakes and being willing to like recognize where you had shortcomings or where you might have missed something, right? Will show growth to the people around you. And ultimately, and the assumption here is you're working in a positive work environment that values that, which is admittedly a big assumption. But generally with the companies, I feel that St. Joe's students come out to, that is something that the institution values. So you have some level of that in there. But like having that conversation with Lorenz just really, kind of has helped my mentality going forward, where it's like, all right, this is like, for me, I played tennis 4 years. It's like, tennis practice, right? Or tennis match, right? Like you're going to make mistakes. You're going to screw up. It's about the adjustments and learning from that moving forward. That will truly help your growth.
Yeah. And another thing I heard you touch on was this entrepreneurial spirit that's kind of necessary in having. I'm wondering if you could speak more to that, and also think about what post-grad experiences best prepare someone if they wanted to start a business or engage in a startup.
Yeah. So with entrepreneurship, I think entrepreneurship lends itself well to the analytical mind, where like entrepreneurship is essentially, if you kind of break it down, it's a series of experiments upon hypotheses you're testing, right? And you can collect data on those series of experiments to validate or invalidate like your hypotheses,
Yeah.
And so I think analytics approaching problems that way, right? Where it's like, how can I test this hypothesis? How can I use data to enhance my decision making, right? I do think analytics really lends itself well to not only just starting a company, right, but actually starting a company in the right way and using data to validate your assumptions or invalidate your assumptions, and maybe you have to make a pivot off that, right? It can make the decision for you in some sense, right? As long as you design the experiment correctly.
Yeah.
And it's and then what was the second part of your question there? Sorry, I'm blanking on
Yeah.
it.
So like what post-grad experiences that students can engage in now to prepare them for that?
Yeah. So by post-grad experiences, do you mean like internships
Sure.
or?
Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
get a little bit more into internships, but yeah, you can speak on it here too.
Yeah. And I think just getting, internship experience with an analytics team, or even if you're not going into an analytics team, right?
Mhm.
Like bringing that analytics mindset,
Yeah.
as I said earlier, analytics is applicable across every single, aspect of a company, of a business, right? And so
Yeah.
if you're able to come with that data driven mindset, then you'll be able to make a difference
Yeah.
wherever you go, especially too if that company doesn't necessarily already have that, and you're able to be the person to show the value in that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's extremely valuable. And one thing too for current students, and maybe it's a little bit more geared towards juniors and sophomores, but what independent research too, like if you have an idea, if you want to do it, right, I recommend it, because it's really one of those things that truly prepares you to take initiative, and like figure out different analytics problems, and it's certainly a hard path. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, but like if you're able to like do that, then you're setting yourself up, you're proving to yourself that, hey, like I can solve ambiguous problems, I can be self-initiated with my work. It's a skill set that extends beyond just what you're learning through analytics,
Sure.
but really kind of shows a different a different side to potential employers as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you just talked a little bit about some experiences to engage in now. I'm wondering if anything else comes to mind, like 2 or 3 experiences that students should be engaging in now to help them prepare um, in entering the field after graduation. And then a follow-up to that, what are some of those internships that students should be trying to secure to prepare for a role like yours?
Yeah. I mean, with the 2 to 3 experiences to engage in now, as I mentioned, independent research, was something that was really, really powerful for me. And, frankly, too, like, I feel like you can find value in any organization across St. Joe's, as long as you get involved and engaged with the community, right? Where you're gonna get something out of it that's gonna contribute either directly to your analytics skill set or indirectly to it. For
Yeah.
me, I used this example earlier, but playing tennis, right? Where like analyzing what strategy the opponent is trying to employ to beat me, and then making adjustments based
Yeah.
on that, and then taking that coachable mentality as well. And for something like whether you're in like a fraternity or sorority, right, like you could be like the finance chair, right, and
Yeah.
organizing the finances, looking at financial data to like figure out dues or how much formal is going to cost this semester,
Yeah.
there's so many different opportunities to apply that analytical mindset, that I think, if you come in more so with the mindset as opposed to a specific organization, right? It's more about the intention rather than the goal, where you can literally apply that to anything that you might be interested in across campus.
Yeah, for sure. And that second part of that question, are there specific internships that you did or that you have in mind that would be good for students to look at?
Yeah, I mean, for me, PwC was an amazing place for me to start my career, and where I interned, where I really felt that, I know the big four is, they're big on campus, and they're big for a reason, to be honest, where they really did a great job of, introducing me to the business environment and like how to, apply my analytical skill set, and like coaching me up, providing mentorship, where that, those internships are great. But, like as far as like, I did another internship for a healthcare auditing company where I analyzed data for them on like fraudulent claims, which was really interesting too. And one thing with internships, I just like, whether or not you go Big Four or healthcare auditing or anything else, right? I just recommend, going for it and trying it out as much as you can, right? And if you don't get an internship, maybe summer scholars or maybe something entrepreneurial, right? It's all that experience is helpful in ultimately figuring out what you want to do. And in some ways, I know for me, it's generally been easier to find what I might not necessarily want to spend the rest of my life doing, versus what I want to spend the rest of my life doing. And it's a journey that I'm 100% still on. So all those experiences will help.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing I wanted to dig into was, how did your Jesuit education impact how you work, or just the career decisions you've made to date?
Yeah, it's been huge. Really has. So for me, I went to Jesuit high school as well. So I'm have 8 years of Jesuit education underneath my belt. And I think, imagine you hear this tagline at St. Joe's, but cura personalis, or education or care for the whole person, right? Is really, really invaluable, and really something that, really a tagline that I always go back to even today, where having the ability to be a multifaceted person and think through different elements of situations, right? And take an empathetic mindset and like place yourself in different perspectives and try to think about a problem or a situation holistically, is something that is applicable to business as well as life, and that has been extremely helpful, and it makes me always willing to try new things and fail too, right? Because it's for the growth of my person, right? And to continue to grow and become a more whole person.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of as we wrap up, I just wanted to remind everyone, feel free to throw some questions down in the chat. But Kyle, I wanted to finish up with two final questions. What is something that you wish someone told you when you were in school? And then the second part of that question is, what is a piece of advice you would give to students who are interested in this path?
Yeah, guess those questions kind of go hand in hand a little bit. For me, as I said earlier, like it's okay to make mistakes too, right? And it's okay to admit and own up to your mistakes, and in fact, it's favorable. once you're out there working in any internship project, and job that you might have in the future, where that's something that's really valuable. And then like also just taking initiative, the value of taking initiative within a company, I cannot understate that, right? Where a lot of times, you may see people who like, oh, well, I don't have anything to do. Nobody's told me what to do today, right? Be the person who goes out and finds things to do, right? Like one of the best pieces of career advice too, I got at the beginning of my PwC career from another person. She just told me, she said two simple words, right? Be brave. Right. Yeah. And so I was like, all right, here we go. So I'll send an email to a few partners, or I'll like put my neck out here a little bit. And sometimes that backfired, but more often than not, as we are analytics people, right? Probabilities, the probability is generally on your side for taking a few risks, right? And going with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kyle, listen, we want to say thank you for hanging out with us a little bit. We do have a few questions that I saw in the chat, so I want to read these to you. What technologies do you find most helpful for you and your team?
Thank you for the question, Mari. So for my team right now, we're a Tableau shop, and so we do our visual analytics through Tableau, right? And that's a really valuable skill set, to being able to design impactful dashboards. One of the things, or some problems that I encounter in working with big data too, particularly, is data cleaning and data design. Are really important, where, all right, how to clean out bad data, what filters do we want to apply, and we use a technology called PySpark, Spark, which may or may not be mentioned in your guys' class, but it's essentially kind of a tool that's used to handle billions of rows of data. And we use that in conjunction with computing services from AWS, where we're able to provision the computing resources that we need in order to run that code to analyze that data. And then, which, by the way, I had no idea how to do any of this big data stuff prior to coming into this, right? So this is all stuff you learn on the job. So don't feel like you have to, if you don't know what I'm like talking about specifically, right? Don't feel like you're behind, right? A lot of this stuff you'll just learn on the job, but it's good to be familiar with it, and at least understand, kind of what I'm talking about prior to entering into a job. And so beyond Tableau, we use R, PySpark, as I said earlier, as well as SQL too. SQL's a huge part of my daily work.
Yeah, awesome. Another one we got in here. Can you speak to confidence required to enter into a new role and switch companies? Where did you draw it from? What do you keep in mind?
This is a great question. I love this question, Angeline. Thank you for submitting it. So yeah, I leaving PwC for me was a big decision, because PwC is a great company. I loved the team I worked on, but for me, as I got in my career down there, I always encourage self-exploration, right? And this is part of the Jesuit education, right, where it's like, all right, what are my life goals, right? Or what do I want to accomplish per se? And as I got more and more into my PwC career, I found myself more within entrepreneurial positions within that company, right? And I realized that, okay, I really want to start my own business. Excuse me. And so like is, and then I came across Venture for America and I was like, okay, I love PwC. It's helping me attain that skill set. But when I look at Venture for America, a program that's specifically designed to, facilitate entrepreneurial growth within people, I just knew it aligned better with what I wanted long term, right? And so it was something that, yeah, I was nervous about, but I could always come back to the fact that it aligned really well. And frankly, better than PwC with my long-term intentions, right? Yeah. And that was a process of self-discovery, right? Where, I think a lot of people may switch jobs because they don't like their current position, right? That wasn't the case at all with me. I really liked my position at PwC, but I knew the role and the program I was going into was just more aligned with my long-term goals.
Sure. Yeah, that's really good insight. We have one more in here. It kind of relates to the last two questions that I asked, but now that you know what you know, what do you wish you knew as a junior or senior?
Now that I know what I know, what do I wish I knew? I mean, there's a lot, and it's just like, I mean, you got technical skills, just the, like, ultimately, I think one thing I didn't necessarily realize that I do realize now, that I was already trying, sort of practicing as a junior and senior, was just how valuable like being curious is, and how valuable, like looking for opportunities for growth, within the institution at St. Joe's, how valuable just looking for those opportunities is going to be within the workplace and within your career. Because one of the interesting things about once you graduate, right, it's like you're not encompassed, like, yes, you're working, right, but you're not encompassed by an institution, right? So like you're not living on campus, you're not surrounded, you're not your life isn't completely dictated by one institution, where you have, you'll have time outside of work, right? Granted, if you're in PwC at busy season, right, that's maybe after busy season, but you have time where you get to decide what you want to do at that time and how you want to spend it. And I think continuing to look for opportunities for growth for yourself, right, in different ways too, and finding the things that, align with your long-term values and what you have fun with and what you enjoy, and to go Jesuit here, what will get you out of bed in the morning, right, is something that's extremely valuable.
Yeah. Well, listen, Kyle, that was the last question we had in the chat. So we just want to express our gratitude and thank you for coming and sharing. I know it was a major benefit to our students. So I do see the one class though. Can we give them a round of applause? Can we give Kyle a round of applause? There we go. Oh, you're on mute, so we can't even hear it. Yeah, that's totally fine. We can see you clapping. So
yeah, thank you, guys.
We know what clapping sounds like. Oh wait, there's one more. One more question just got in here. What is depth of knowledge about Tableau and SQL in the real workplace?
Yeah, so
as it requires.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it depends. Depends on the position too. For entry level, I don't think anybody's expecting anyone to come in and being an expert. As you're, progress and, depending upon the work that you're doing, right? I think more importantly than like the depth of knowledge is just the ability to learn it too.
Yeah.
It always helps too. Like if that's something that you really want to do in terms of data visualization, data transformation, right? Being able to show and display, that, a deeper knowledge of technical skills, right? Where you're able to maybe speak to things beyond the beginner level, can really impress in an interview too. So
Yeah.
I would say it depends, but if you're able to talk to something beyond the beginner level, that's always really impressive from the other side.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, listen, thank y'all for joining. And we hope to see y'all soon. Thanks again, Kyle.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Have a good one.